Okay, so now let's see how we can use one of the built-in functions of the DOM to manipulate this page here. Okay, so earlier we had this page. See if I have the same message come out. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so now as you can see that we use the DOM, the document. The document has a lot of properties and functions that are associated with it. So if you let me put this again to show you, and you'll be using this a lot in a couple of chapters ahead. But the word document again, type in document. If I type in the word get, okay, get here, you see that one of these functions is called get element by ID, and we'll be using that in this example. And others are included like class name by a tag name ns, and for namespace, and so on. Okay, so we'll use those later on to target a particular element or a group of elements in the document here. So the ID, that's like the name says, you're going to target a tag or element that has an ID as unique ID. Okay, so we'll use that, and then we'll change its content and so on using this function here. So let's go into our code, and let's say, well, before that, let's just say that. So this is the message here, right? And let's say that we have let's write a button. We'll put a button right below here, and then we'll also have an input tag that we can include a message. Yeah, we'll see a message, and then we type a message here. We'll click the submit button, and it will send this message inside here and replace this line with a new message. Okay, you can do that using JavaScript without reloading the page, and that's the beauty of JavaScript, right? Is it's interactive on the client side. Okay, so let's go here to our code, and let's kind of build this script here. So here is the message that we want to manipulate. First, let's give this an ID. So the h1 tag, I give an ID. I'll just call it main message. Okay, we can call it whatever, but just call it main message for now. That is the unique ID for that h1 tag. So that means I can change it and replace its content based on this ID here. And to see this in action, okay, I'll show you. So let's save this. Since we gave an ID of call main message, let's save this and go back to the browser again. And you see that throughout the course, I'll be using this quite extensively, the browser and this F12 to inspect my code, because this is where you do all your code, all your work in the browser. And once you get it working the way you want it, and you just copy the code, put it back into the actual source code, so you don't have to do that, switching back and forth with the two. Okay, so for now you see that in the elements, we go here, and I already have the ID called message applied to this text here, right? So this document called document.getElementById takes one parameter in here. The parameter here is the ID itself. The ID is called main message. That is the ID, right? So that means it's going to find within this document an element that has a ID, has the value of call main message. And usually a web page has only one unique ID, but sometimes you can have multiple because, you know, some people code it differently. I guess you're not supposed to, but you can. It's not gonna crash your page or anything like that. But the first occurrence it finds this message ID called main message, it's going to return that tag to you. So it maps, it looks at your document, and it's aha, there it is. It's h1 has an ID, has a value main message, and it grabs that. So you can see it targets that tag already. So now I have access to this h1 tag. I can then manipulate its content. Okay, so if I go back, and if you press the up arrow key, that means you load the previous statements. You don't have to retype it again. I'm going to go to the front of this. Just press the home key, go to the front. And I'm going to assign this to a variable. I say var, if you want to call it var like we did before. Var, I'll call this the h1. I just call h1, the same name, equals that. So now I assigned this h1 object to the h1 variable here. And you hit enter. And so now my h1 has that, points to this h1 tag here. So if we type in h1, you see that it points to that same element. So the h1 is a JavaScript variable. So now I have the pointer point to the same location. I can change its content. I can also get its content. To read its content, you can say h1.inner HTML or inner text. Inner HTML. If I do inner text, you see the message is called "Welcome to JavaScript," the text. If I do inner HTML, it gets the actual scripts, all the tags included, along with the text. So the difference between the two, the inner text and the inner HTML, exactly what it means. Text means just grab the text itself, ignore all the elements inside it. If it has a lot of text and a lot of elements, it will ignore all of them and just grab the text, collect the text. This is a really good way how you can write a script to scrape websites, collect text. Okay, and then you can use those texts to do something. But if you want to grab the HTML also, then use the inner HTML. If I do that, I can see that if I do the text, then I receive the text called "Welcome to JavaScript." So if I do that, I'm just reading the content from that page. What if I want to change it? Well, I can change it by going to h1.innerText equals something. Equal my new message. I call it hi. I hit enter. You see that it changes to the word hi. It overrides whatever I had before to a new text. Because I'm only changing the text, I did not change the HTML. That means the script tag is still there, right? So if I type in h1 again, inner text, inner HTML, well, I probably replaced it. Otherwise, you should see the yeah, it probably replaced everything there. Yeah, replace the whole thing there. Okay, so at least you see that now h1 has a new message called just hi. Okay. So now we can do that by using JavaScript to change the content based on a mouse click. So based on an event, whatever that event is, we can then go ahead and manipulate the data. Okay, so let's go back to our code, and this time right below here, I'm going to create an input, input text, and we'll give an ID. We'll call it data, and that's all we need, right? Just input. And then next we're going to put a button. I will call it click me, something like that. Okay. So we have an ID here, an ID here. We're going to replace the content here with the content from this input box when I click the button. Okay, and so for an event to occur, I have to put inside the button here. For now, before we read the data from here, see how much time we have, I'm going to put a click event here. A click event, I think there's one in the book somewhere in page like 30 maybe. Oh, I lost it. But I think around page 30 or so, there is a list of some events you can use. But the common one is like the click event. So you will type the attribute called onClick. Right? It tells you all the events, the type of word on. the ID tells you on, you have on mouse enter, on submit, on click, on key down, all these stuff here are events. The word on here, it means it's an event that is associated with any of these elements. And so on click, when I click it, what should happen? So equal to and then a pair of single quotes or double quotes, doesn't matter which one. Inside here is where I put my JavaScript, right? It's automatically points to a script. So that means inside here I can use break down to a different line so I can type it easily. Just make sure it wraps inside that double quotes. So when I click this button, I want to change the H1's content to something else. So remember I did in the browser, I say document dot get element by ID. Okay, so JavaScript is loosely typed, but it's also case sensitive. So that means your function, your variables must match exactly the way you create it or the way it's given by the default. So here, I capitalize is using the camel case, right? Camel case means you lowercase the first letter, you uppercase every word after that. Okay, it's camel case. It's kind of easy to remember that. So inside here, the ID is called main message. Now, notice because I already wrapped this inside a double quotes, I don't want to put a double quotes again. If I do that, it's not going to work. Okay, it has to be a single quote because I can use between the two, right? If it's done with a double quote, inside if it's a quote again, I use single, and vice versa. So the text, the ID is called main message. Right, that's the one. And if I do exactly like I did in the browser, I set that to a variable called h1, right? H1 is that. And then I'm going to do h1.innerText equals hello JS. Again, use single quote, sorry. So I have two lines of code in there that is wrapped inside this pair of quotes. It's assigned to a click event. It only fires when I click the button. This input here, I just put it there, we didn't do anything yet. We'll do it in a minute. So if I save it now, okay, so make sure this function is valid. Make sure you type exactly it is. If you miss it by one letter, it's not going to work. The word is element, is singular, because ID is unique, is singular. All the others are like by class names and so on are plural. So you see like get elements by name or by tag name because you have multiple versions. So save that and go back to the browser and refresh my page so that everything reloads again. Okay, so here's the button. When I click on it, changes to. Oh, hi.
How you doing?
Good. How about you?
Great. I just had one of my web students successfully report to a project.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We should talk about AWS sometime.
Yes, we sure will. Night time. Okay. So you saw that happen, right? You click on the button, it updates the new content. I mean, I open it with the new content, hello.js, without doing any page loads, right? And so now if I click it, it's going to be adding the same content again and again. Okay, so that's JavaScript response to the event. And now, I guess the next part is now if I want to type something here, I want to be able to move that content and replace this text with whatever I type here. Okay, so again, when I click on it, I'm going to grab the data from this input and then move that to the h1 tag. Right, that's the logic, right? Okay, so back to the code. So we got this part. We're targeting the target. Now I need to read the data from the input. So the input has ID called data. So you can do the same thing here. So you can say var, I'll call it data, it's a variable name, equals to the same thing, document element by ID, target a new element has the ID of data. But now, if I do that, I'm just going to target this tag. If you want to get the actual value from that tag, remember the input tags, all the input elements, input, select, and text area has a attribute called value, right? Value equals something. And so you want to get the value from this input tag. So over here will be dot value. Oh, not value, oh, it's just value. I think just value, yeah. And it will return the value, whatever I put in there. I put the word hello. Hello will be assigned to data. And then down here, instead of say hello.js, I'm gonna pass in the actual data variable here to the new h1. So I'm moving data from one input tag to another element when I click on that button. Okay, so let's see if this works. Refresh the page, reload it, everything loads again. If I click now, it's going to be empty. There's nothing there because I didn't put anything there, right? If I type in the word hi, click, and there's hi, JS, and so on. So you're moving one data from one element to another element. You're not limited to just one element. You can add that element to anywhere else. You can replace all of these with whatever I put here, with any content you want to. Okay? Here I'm just showing you that we have access to this input tag because it has an ID. We have access to this h1 tag because it has an ID. And we can target any element in the document here using JavaScript. Once you target it, you can change all sorts of stuff with it. Okay? So, for example, again here, F12, just the way it is here. So if I, down here, document, what I have earlier, I have the h1 equals document get element by ID. ID is called main message, right? So it points to the h1, and that is the one. So I replace the content. You can change the color of it by using the style. So h1 dot style dot color, and you assign that to a new color, call it red, and now it's red, right? So you can see that you can change all those inside the script. I can change it so that h1 style dot border has a different border. This is just CSS stuff. Maybe 2 pixels. It's dashed and it's green, right? So it has that in there. I can change h1 style dot width to be maybe 100 px. Oh, let's be 100. Okay, so you can do all sorts of stuff. Once you test it here, all this works, then you can see that I can add these into my code. Right down here, I add the text. I can then change the color or the border, change the color to like just say again purple, and so on. So my limit is like pretty much like the sky, really. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can move it around and so on. You can also apply events to the h1. When I click on it, it should move it somewhere else, because I now have access to these click events, all these events here. So if I save that, and refresh my page, everything's fresh again. And if I just click on it, right, there's no data. I put something here. See that it's purple, has a dash text border, and so on. So I did 3 things to the H1. I changed the text, I added a border, and I changed the color to purple when I click the button. So all this done by targeting any element. If I know the ID, I can use this function called getElementById, and then you can get the value or point to that element and do something about it. Sorry. Yeah, this is really there's a lot here, more than the IMAX Center. I'm sorry, Joe. Can you ask the question again?
Would it be wrong to include style tags inside the unclick double quotes?
Okay. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you mean.
You have a double quote, and then give it 2 sets of quotes, like 7 lines from each other. Why is there this? So when we were first doing it, I assumed you had to put the open style tag and style tag. I kind of get it why.
You mean scripts?
Script, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that was my question as well.
Oh.
There's no script tagging time.
Oh, yeah, right.
It just
Good question.
assumes
Yeah, because
you're doing an on-click and emitting inside the quotes is JavaScript.
yep.
Oh,
So by
on-click is specific to JavaScript.
Yep. So it is by default. You're not gonna put a script in there. If you have a script, you have a script inside another script. So yeah. So once you use on-click, it only works for the on-click on something. On-click on mouse enter on keyboard key press. That means the equal to something that inside the pair of double quotes or single quotes is pure JavaScript. Okay. So yeah, great question. And so all these here, as you can see, this is not the way to do it. I did it here because I want to show you that this is JavaScript, right? Because we haven't learned function yet. So usually you would put all these into a function and then you call that function. Okay? And then you put that into a function instead. But it doesn't mean that you cannot put JavaScript here. So it's all JavaScript in here. And these are not JavaScript though. If you put script in here, it doesn't work because it's not part of the JavaScript. So everything you see something like on click on something, that is an event. It's a click event. Usually the word or words after the word on is the name of that event. On click, on blur, on mouse enter, on mouse leave. Okay. And so that's how you can manipulate elements. So here again, I put my, let's see. Yeah, so the scripts here, these are attached to an event. So this only fires when I click on the button. If I don't attach this to event, I can take all these out. Like all these here, I can take all out. And of course this is empty, there's nothing here, right? And put it down here at the bottom. Put down here, like that. It will still work. The only thing is that it's not going to wait. It's going to load it and change it right away, right? So if I change, so that means, let's say that in my initial value I put here, UTC, something like that. If I load it, what initially I had was the message, which is this message, and then it runs down here. It loads on the browser. It runs all the way down here to the end, and adds the data, reads the value from the input. In this case, the default value is GTC with 3 exclamation marks, and then locates the H1, and then immediately changes content to that data, add the green dashes, and then the purple text color. If I save that, and I reload my page, it happens instantly. So you're not going to see the welcome message anyway. So it's happened instantly, right? Because I did not trigger any event. It didn't wait. It runs it right away. And if I do click it, because now we remove that event, it doesn't tie it to this anymore. So what do I type here? It doesn't work anymore. But it runs it once at the bottom of the page. Now, what I want to show you is if I move these, all of it, move it toward the top. Let's say, up here in the same place where I have the title and stuff. I put that here. And the same content. If I save it, and now if I go back to the browser and run it, you see that it didn't work, right? It did not change the content right away. And the reason why is because, again, the way the page is rendered from top to bottom. So if you press F12 to inspect it again, and the console, you're going to get an error. It says, cannot read the property value of null. Null means not assigned at line 14. If you want to know what that is, click here, you click over here. It tells you that line 14, the value is not known of this element with ID of data. It's empty. It's not defined. Well, that's true because we are trying to access an element with the ID of data at line 14. None of these below here, none of this code have been rendered on the browser yet. There's no data at all. Above it, there's no data has the ID of data. That's why it doesn't work. Okay? So it loads from top to bottom. When we put this in the bottom, it works because by the time we reach it, this data has already existed, the H1 has been rendered, and so on. These will work. Okay, so the order of your code, JavaScript code, is important if you are trying to access some element in your document. If you are not doing that, if you're just setting variables like this here, then you don't really care, then it's fine. But as soon as you access data with an element, this order becomes really important. In that case, you want to put it after the HTML has been rendered. Okay? And if it's not, then you have to find a way to do that. And you have to wrap it with a special function called unload, window unload function. Okay. And we'll talk about function next time. But just know that if you want to render the DOM, it needs to be at the bottom before the rest of the HTML has been loaded. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to put it back to where it was before. Okay, Humpty Dumpty. Let's undo. And right there. Okay. Okay, I'm going to show you one more thing, and then maybe we can call it a night. And this is not part of chapter 1 or anything like that. It's just the way JavaScript works, and it's also part of the newer version, which is not new anymore, but the ES6 version. Okay, in JavaScript, when you declare variables like up here, okay, if I wanted to type a message, like a really long message, for example, I'm going to copy this a couple of times. If I want to do something like that, as you can see, it's pretty long, right? And this is still considered one line. If you look at the line number, it's still just a line 9. Okay, one line of text. Now, when you do this, you say, I want to be able to use in multiple lines. Now, this IDE is kind of nice because, as you can see, if I enter like this, it automatically adds the plus sign, and we learn from the plus sign that it's a concatenator. Okay, just I guess this is enough. It concatenates all that string that many times. So I'm using, you know, 6, 7 lines, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines of code, and I'm joining the strings together like this. I have like that 7 times. If I save that and run it, you see that it has a really long text here. If I type something, it changes to that. Okay. So here, if you want to write text in multiple lines, there's a long paragraph, a long text, you cannot just like do that. If I remove the plus, okay, you would think that this is like, hey, it's still on a single line. So the quotation starts here and ends down here. So in between should be just text. Okay, but I'm using multiple lines to do it instead of a single line. Single line is no problem. But as soon as we hit the enter key, and you would think that this is part of the string. It is not in JavaScript. Okay, you have to do the plus like you saw earlier. This IDE fixed it for you. If you were to use like a Notepad++ or a different syntax, a different code, it won't do that for you. It will have an error. So if you, anytime when you do a really long string like this, and you want to write using multiple lines, like especially when you write a poem, right? A poem or something, and you want to have it say very nicely written out, then instead of the double quotes or single quotes, these two won't work. Either one won't work. You can use what's called the template tag, or I guess script character, which is the backtick. The backtick is the character right before the number 1 on the keyboard. So this backtick here starts there and ends down here, right? So in between, you can see that now I have multiple lines of text, as you know, 6 lines, but still from here to here is a single string of text. This is a new syntax introduced in ES6, because you know you can't do multiple lines of text without using the plus, the concatenation operator. So with this new template operator, the backtick, you can write multiple lines of text, wrap it inside there, and makes the code looks really clean. Just be really careful with the little thing there. Just make sure it's there. Okay? Because it's a template tag or character, it also lets you do something really cool. So notice down here, when I did the message earlier, I showed you earlier, right, the age here, I have to use the plus sign. Okay, I want to do this one last time. I guess this will be the last one. This is like, how many times? Okay, so notice here I joined 3 sentences or 3 texts together. If I want to use a backtick, again, do the backtick from here to here, and remove all the quotes inside it. Okay. Now the age here, I showed you earlier that if you do this, it's just the variable age, that is the string age. So if I save this, save it, and go to my browser, refresh, you see that the word age is just age, right? It's supposed to say 25 or 55. But I did not parse that. Now if I want to include it as a variable, then if you're using the backtick or the template character, then you can actually include variables inside here if you wrap it with a $sign followed by a pair of curly braces like this. Okay, so now the interpreter will look at this and say, oh, okay, this is a template. Inside a template, I can insert variables if it's wrapped inside a pair of curly braces preceded by a $sign. So that way, you don't have to do the plus and plus and join those strings together. So it makes it really, really useful for writing templates, and that's also part of the new ES6 syntax. So now, if I save it, go back, you see that now it's been parsed and then templated into the actual value, which is 55. Okay? So, something really cool you can use. And if you learn in PHP, it's kind of similar to PHP. If you learn in PHP, you can inject variable inside a script or string just like that. So just something for you to, I guess, use and as you write code and help you shorten your code. All right, I think that's everything I wanted to cover tonight. So if you run into any issues or you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to send me an email or post in the discussion board so everybody can also see it too. And go ahead and read it in Chapter 2. Chapter 2 talks about functions, data types. We'll learn about the 6-7 data types in JavaScript, and some of the, I think, more of the DOM manipulations and so on. So we'll learn the different types of functions, the standard function, or we call the named function, as well as some of the anonymous functions in JavaScript. Anonymous functions are functions without a name. Okay. Okay.